With Car Guru's Discover, you can skip the filters and describe what you're looking for in your own words. Simply type what you want, and Car Guru's Discover instantly surfaces real listings that match your exact needs. It's no wonder Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site according to SimilarWeb's estimated traffic data. Buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com. cargurus.com.
Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Robin. Welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, February 19, 2026, as we record this show. By the time many of you listen to this, the Chicago White Sox will be starting to play spring training games. In this episode, we'll get the latest from White Sox spring training camp as beat reporter James Fegan shares insight into the starting pitching competition and the White Sox outfield situation. Later, we'll discuss the possible impact of Tony Clark's sudden resignation as leader of the Major League Baseball Players Association and what it means for Bruce Meyer to take over. The Chicago White Sox face their inner-city rival, the Chicago Cubs, to start spring training games in Mesa, Arizona on Friday, February 20th. White Sox manager Will Venable shared what he's hoping to see from game action this spring.
Well, I think, we want to evaluate what's going on and make sure that there's ways we can better support these guys, knowing that they're coming in these games with these adjustments. First couple games, you're not looking evaluating too much in kind of the performance. Just want to make sure that they have a sense of what we're trying to do as far as executing plays. There's going to be a bunch of things that come up that we'll end up addressing and kind of correcting. So I really just want to sit back and let them get their feet wet and kind of use the information to help us move forward.
White Sox outfield competition will be a focus in the upcoming spring training games. Venable already likes what he sees from Everson Pereira.
It is batting practice in live BP, and there'll be another level of challenge for him as these games get going. But as far as the way he's carrying himself, the way that he's going about his defensive stuff, the base running stuff, and then obviously finding a lot of barrels in these live BPs is just great to see, and can't wait to see him out there in the games.
New White Sox hitting coach Derek Shomon provided an update on how the hitters are faring at camp.
Nice thing about players attacking things individually, that you should be excited about just about like everyone as you kind of look down our offensive roster. So, Mune being here for the time that he is before he leaves for the WBC, like the work's been great, and just watching him kind of get acclimated and, it's a big adjustment. So I would say just watching him kind of go through that process has been fun.
At least for this first week of spring training games, White Sox fans, hell, even I can't wait to see what Munetaka Murakami does facing live pitching in a White Sox uniform. Shomon shared what he's looking for from Murakami in his first few at-bats before he joins Team Japan in the World Baseball Classic.
Just the skill transferring into in-game performance, right? But certainly not for a lack of intentional work. I mean, look over the cages right now, the guys in there getting after it. So we'll just use the game as kind of the tell of what needs to be addressed next. But happy that we're starting tomorrow. Happy that we're getting to see another club.
Shomon was asked about what the experience has been like working with Murakami. If you didn't get a chance to read it, James Fegan on SoxMachine.com interviewed Murakami, and after reading that feature, you can tell he's one motivated hitter to prove a lot of doubters wrong across Major League Baseball. Shomon loves that mindset and energy Murakami brings.
This guy's smart. He really is. Like, the aptitude is there. He has an understanding of likely what is going to be exposed, and he's doing a really good job attacking it on a daily basis and being really intentional with his work. And yeah, that certainly makes it easier for us, right? There was alignment there as soon as he came into town. Yeah, it can be tough. Like, you kind of got to pick and choose, especially with a guy getting ready to leave for WBC, is like how much you want to give them, on top of the fact that this is all new for him, right? So you can, like, testament to his work ethic, and just like how savvy he is. Like, he has a clue, and he really is getting ahead of it.
Back to Everson Pereira. I'll ask James Fegan in a moment, but it seems like the White Sox are going to give him a chance to win a job on the 26-man roster, even if Andrew Benintendi is trying to prove he can play every day in left field, and the additions of Austin Hayes and Jared Kelenic. Shomon explains what he's having Pereira work on offensively to rediscover that potential he once had as a prospect.
I think, like, attacking some things like mechanically under the hood that put him in a better position to, just simply put, like, shorter the baseball. It's like when we had our meeting with him, it's like, dude, you make good decisions, you do damage, like, you can move it forward. It's the contact thing, right? It's the bat to ball, it's the end zone whiff, and it's not that you don't know how to make contact. You do, otherwise you wouldn't be here. It's like what's causing the contact issues, and so I think those things were identified early on with him, and then again, like, every day they're attacked. And if you ever, like, just swing by the cage, you're going to see a bunch of wonky stuff that's going on, but it's all in pursuit of attacking that flaw and putting him in a better position to perform in game.
Finally, I think many White Sox fans would agree with me. If this offense can continue their post-All-Star break performance from last season to 2026, 70 wins or more should be attainable. But it's still not clear what the offensive identity is for the White Sox. Will they be more reliant on home runs with Colson Montgomery and Munetaka Murakami in the lineup? Do they still value contact over everything, hoping that improvement in base running translates to more runs? Shomon addressed what he hopes is the White Sox offensive identity in 2026.
What you're chasing is multifaceted, right? So what you're looking at is, what do you have roster comp-wise? Like, what does that guy do well when he rolls out of bed in the morning? Like, how do we look to enhance that? And then collectively, what does that look like? And I think, like, we have some guys that can move it forward at will, right? Line to line, earth to sky. We have some guys that can slug this year. We have some guys that are willing to play the small game and take advantage of a third baseman being back. So you kind of, like, look at it from a 30,000-foot lens that way, and then see, like, how is your work lining up to kind of bring that out, right? So it's not an all-slug offense. It's not necessarily a BABIP offense. You kind of got this well-rounded thing in place. That's exciting, right? So you have multiple solutions.
Joining me now on the Sox Machine podcast, down in spring training camp in Glendale, Arizona, is Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan. And in Nashville is managing editor Jim Margalus. Again, we're everywhere. Well, not everywhere. We're in a lot of places at Sox Machine. Next week, I'm going to be down in Arlington, Texas, doing this show, as I'll go check out Rock Chalowski in person. But exciting time. On Friday, we're going to see spring training games for the Chicago White Sox as they start their schedule in Mesa, Arizona against the Chicago Cubs. That game will be broadcasted on ESPN 1000 radio, so if you have the MLB radio subscription, you'll be able to hear Len Casper call the game. The game should be also available if you already have the MLB.TV spring training package. If you are in the Chicagoland area and you have the Marquee channel, that game will be broadcasted there. But for the White Sox on their home network, CHSN, those games on Saturday and Sunday for at home for the White Sox will be on those channels. So if you don't get a chance to watch them on Friday, you'll have a chance on Saturday and Sunday to see them. But with the first spring training game, James, what do we know and how Will Venable is going to set up the lineup? Who will be the starting pitching? Who should expect to play out in the field? And maybe who's not going to be playing? So let's start on the pitching side. Who's getting the ball first?
Jonathan Cannon's starting. This is usually the time where I think of previous people who have started Cactus League openers.
Legends.
Jordan Guerrero, Don Roach. Just my way of saying, please don't read a ton into the Cactus League starting pitcher. I'll shoot from the hip now. I'd probably bet Shane Smith's a lot more likely to start opening day than Jonathan Cannon. one man's opinion.
What?
We'll see. I really should have just taken a photo of the pitching line, but it's not like big names after Cannon. I want to say like Tyler Schweitzer might get a couple innings in there tomorrow. But it's like a lot of relievers or kind of like guys who are competing for spots more than like, because like otherwise the priority is to transition is people who are going to play in the WBC. Will Venable want to get them like first crack at things. So Curtis Mead is like leading off. Murakami's playing. Kyle Teal and Sam Antonacci, the two Team Italy guys, are playing. Will Venable's recent favorite of live at bats, Everson Pereira, is going to play. Colson Montgomery is not playing tomorrow.
Okay.
But
he's okay, right?
Yeah. I mean, I watched him hit today, but it was just like, this is someone who will be here all spring. We don't have to kind of rush him into the lineup. So that was more like the emphasis that like Venable generally cut with his first day of practice. But again, I did hear that through the grapevine that Murakami wants to play, or at least wanted to play every single day until he left. I don't think that's what the White Sox are going to do with their big investment of have him go from 0 to 60 in Cactus League action. I think it's generally one of those I appreciate your candor type of responses to a proposal. Like, wow, a lot of spirit from that guy. Absolutely not.
That'd be 7 games in a row. Tire him out before he even gets on the plane, heading back to Japan to play for Team Japan, to get that bull started in the World Baseball Classic. It's going to be exciting, Jim. And I think when you first set up that game thread on SoxMachine.com, for those that are able to watch either on MLB.TV or on Marquee, man, if Murakami gets a hold of one, and that's how he starts off spring training in a White Sox uniform, he may create more buzz than Rock Chalowski home runs right now on White Sox Twitter, because that's generating a lot of excitement. And I think that'd be a great way to start spring training, but being realistic, for me, everyone to stay healthy, knock on wood. What are you hoping to see from the White Sox in the first few spring training games?
Yeah, I think, something cool from Murakami would be great to write about, great to share, great to podcast about. It would resonate worldwide, or at least on the other side of the world, and that would be great. I think, thinking about it in terms of like White Sox content that lives a while, it's always nice for guys to build a little bit of a hype reel at Camelback Ranch, like guys like Kyle Teal or Sam Antonacci or Braden Montgomery. You guys might not be in the majors immediately, or maybe even 4 months, the entire first half, but you have something where they're wearing a White Sox-ish uniform and facing major league pitching and putting over the wall. Always welcome, just for filing away. I think as the games get started, I'm looking forward to the outfield battle. I'm looking forward to seeing what this Everson Pereira talk is all about, given that he seemed to have the biggest warts, I think, of any outfield contender, and yet he's getting a lot of the most positive press early on. So want to see what he looks like. Jared Kelenic would, if he were able to turn into an average outfielder, or even like a plus platoon outfielder, that would solve so many problems for the next couple of seasons, and just just removes one transaction Chris Getz has to make every winter if he's able to do that. So it'd be cool to see him get off to a decent start. Among the pitchers, I think I'm looking forward to seeing changeups, if they're being thrown. Like, what is Hagen Smith throwing as a third pitch? What is David Sandlin throwing? Duncan Davitt, guys who are, Tanner McDougal, these right-handed pitchers who could really use something to get lefties off their case, and have been working on something all off season, or in Smith's case, he's lefty. He needs something against righties, and showed it a little bit in the fall league. But looking forward to seeing what those pitches look like, to the extent that you can see them in the desert. And this is a case where it's nice to have StatCast, just because, sometimes if pitches are bouncing the dirt, you can't tell if it was a fastball or a changeup or a slider. So having some idea of how it's coming out of the hand, and having some way to measure and count it and compare it start to start, is going to be a nice little development here. So I think those are, when it comes to guys who are pitching like 2 innings at most, or guys who are maybe getting 2 at bats at most, I think that's kind of what I'm most looking forward to seeing and trying to draw anything of a, if not a conclusion, at least an early read from.
Yes, again, we mentioned this a couple of podcasts ago, but for podcast listeners, Baseball Savant will be having StatCast available for all spring training sites. That's going to be new for us covering the White Sox this year. We really had to just lean on the available data when the White Sox were playing the Seattle Mariners and the Colorado Rockies. That's not the case. We will now have StatCast data for all spring training games. So we'll be able to track along and be able to report that data. If you don't get a chance to look up for yourself on Baseball Savant, we'll be doing that as well. Jim mentioned Everson Pereira. We heard from Will Venable and Derek Shomon, the hitting coach of the Chicago White Sox, talk about Everson Pereira. James, with Pereira, is he a priority here? Like, what's the vibe? Because I know one of the other things we're going to be focusing on watching spring training games is just how are these outfielders looking? Does he have like an inside track, or like I mentioned, does he have a priority of making this 26-man roster?
I mean, he's out of options, so it's kind of play me or wave me, literally. And I think in terms of firing him, you'd want to at least see what you have to some degree. Whereas someone like Brooks Baldwin has options, even if you want to give him like a lot of time, you don't have to cut him at the end of spring training if you don't have an immediate fit for him. So I think in selling him, Chris Getz talked about like, well, we at least think he could play all 3 positions and hit lefties. As a way of like couching like the way they fit him onto the roster, even before like say he established himself as someone who's really deserving of worthy playing time. His triple sash numbers in AAA look pretty nice. I think it's like an 870 OPS or something like that. He's obviously extremely strikeout prone. I want to say it's like 38% for his like major league opportunities. It's only like 50 games. It's not even all starts in terms of sample size, and he's only 24. But it's like, you'll see a swing and it's going to be really fast and really cool looking, but you're probably also going to see a little bit of like why it's something that swings and misses in the zone a lot. It's a little clunky. We'll kind of see like how much they've smoothed it out or what they can do to add more contact. He was speaking through an interpreter, but it was still pretty funny. I asked him like, what can you do to like get more contact without sacrificing, some of the power that obviously makes you stand out? And his first answer is like, well, I think like it's somewhat impossible. But I'm going to try to do my best. Like you have, what he was saying is like, you have to sacrifice at least a little. I can't like max out swing if I want to like shave down for contact. Showman says they're doing a lot of different drills that they hope are like getting him be able to move his barrel up to different quadrants in the zone. He's, struggled with elevated velocity, which is generally what you see with guys who have power swings, who swing and miss in the zone a lot. So I was like, there's probably not like, he's always going to be like an elevated strikeout dude. The idea is like, what can you do where we get it to like, hey, it's under 30 and you're seeing his power like playing games and like maybe he excels in certain matchups, like by one window and like covering how another team operates is like getting let go from the Athletic in 2023 and like covering the back end of like that Cubs season. But like they had Patrick Wisdom in there and he wasn't a straight like platoon hitter. He'd platoon, but he'd also face sinker ball and righties because he couldn't cover 4-seamers up at the top. So like he'd get pulled or he'd not start against like a guy with like a 4-seamer, but he might start against a right-handed sinker baller. Maybe like that's a sort of like quote unquote platoon that like he could fit into beyond just like hitting lefties, ideally, if they got him going. Or maybe he just like becomes great. He was a former top 100 prospect. I don't know. I think the outfield is wide open enough that you can kind of see anybody's taking a step forward. And I think he at least gives you a priority of like give him a look early on because he's out of options. Now, if he's really just like falls on his face or has been as bad in the majors as he's been in the previous stops, like you could, get him to clear through waivers. But as far as like, does he have a priority? I think he has a priority in terms of let's not just like throw this guy away before we've had a look at him. But maybe not a priority in terms of like, hey, he's got right field no matter what happens in spring. I think it's more like, let's try to find a way to carry him and let's hope he grows into a larger role. I would give him priority beyond that.
Yeah, because like you mentioned, and I've come around to the idea the White Sox are probably going to carry 5 guys on their 26-man roster that play in the outfield. Jim, I know you've been a big supporter of Brooks Baldwin, and he was making you look good. Post All-Star break, he was one of those White Sox hitters that was hitting a lot better. Is this now something we have to pay attention to? We have to lump Brooks Baldwin in this Jared Kelenic, Everson Pereira outfield battle now that you have Acuna, which Chris Getz, I'm giving Acuna a spot, Jim, because Chris Getz, that was the whole point of the well, not the whole point of the Luis Robert trade, but that's the one.
There's definitely another point.
Yeah, it's a big point to Chris Getz, and it sounds like Acuna is going to be getting a lot of time in center field. Benintendi wants to prove he can play every day. They signed Austin Hayes. That's 3. So you got 2 more spots. And if it's between Kelenic, Pereira, and Baldwin, is that the battle that we're going to be watching in February into March?
Yeah, I think center field is Baldwin's angle in. So if Acuna looks shaky or if he gets banged up or something like that, I don't know who else you play out there. Also, when it comes to forming a bench, who is your second best center field option if Kelenic is not on the roster? I'm not sure if Pereira is great, but nobody is really cut out for it. Baldwin might be the second best option, so that is a lifeline. But yeah, so many guys out of options. Acuna is out of options. Pereira is out of options. You have Hayes and Benintendi. So if they're all hitting or all functioning the way they should, then yeah, it does leave a very narrow margin. Kelenic is on minor league contract, so he can open the season in Charlotte if need be. Just gets a little bit hairy if they add him at some point. They select his contract over the season, and then he doesn't look great, and they want to try to send him down or something like that. Then it might get a little dicey. But they have the option of opening the season with him in Charlotte, so that is one release valve for them to ease some tension. And then yeah, Baldwin can be bumped up and down as well. It's just, yeah, I think you're seeing, to the extent that Luis Robert Jr. provided stability, and with his leg injuries, that was often fleeting. But yeah, this center field, turning it over to, 2 players, maybe 3 over the course of the season does require bodies. If Acuna isn't somebody who is a capable center fielder, maybe even plus based on the skill set, and also is just good enough to bat 8th or 9th and turn the lineup over, I think is what you want to see. Even if he's hitting too many grounders, he might be able to get a 3 something OBP, and speed and defense might be enough to hold down that spot. If it's not, then yeah, they have a whole bunch of guys that try to run through waivers and try to keep him on the roster. But yeah, Baldwin is, that's the case where his options can be used against him. And yeah, I think the best case scenario, which is everybody looks great and everybody looks worth major league at bats in April and May, then yeah, he might be the odd man out.
In our upcoming position season preview episodes that'll be running through the month of March, we'll be revisiting this, of course, tracking along to see how all the players for the Chicago White Sox are faring. But outfield, obviously, we've been talking about since the offseason, is going to be a focus of spring training and how guys are performing. The other area is starting pitching. And I thought, James, for a moment, we had a pretty good understanding after the Eric Fetty signing of what the White Sox starting rotation would be. Maybe if you guys are competing for one spot, but every time you get into a media scrum, and every time I hear someone talk about what their role is for the Chicago White Sox at the pitching front, it seems more and more White Sox pitchers want to throw their hat in the ring to compete to be in the starting rotation. How many guys are competing and vying for spots in the White Sox starting rotation right now? Is it more than 8?
Venable keeps saying 10. 10. He said that kind of distant. I would also counter that I think the White Sox rotation, I think my idea of what it's going to be is still pretty stable. They've just merely accumulated appropriate depth, and maybe we haven't been exposed to this kind of approach in a way that makes it seem looks a little strange. Why do you have more candidates for spots? What are you intend? What are you up to, sir? It's kind of what the vibe. I would probably still predict Smith, Kay, Martin, Fetty, and Burke, and feel pretty good about it. It's just that we're probably having more people come up and say, yeah, I'm trying to start here. So Austin Voth, I don't think we really discussed it. He was an NRI brought it a couple days ago. I talked to him today. He wants to start. He went to the MPB just so he could start last year. And the reason he came back and signed with this team because he said, they told me there's an opportunity to start. And hell, I think if he pitches well, it's hard to be like, there's no way I ever get past murderer's row and actually get an opportunity here. I think if you perform this kind of opportunity, but it's been more of a case of like, all right, so who are they talking about when they say the 10 guys? Because we know they're not really talking about like the top prospects in terms of like Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, Tanner McDougal can win a spot in the rotation, or even David Sandlin aren't like really being asked to like try to win a spot out of spring training. So it's more like Mike Vassell, Austin Voth, Jonathan Cannon. And then it's like murky because like, are you just counting like literally everyone who's like going to pitch more than like 2 innings or more? Or, like, do you count Sean Newcomb? Obviously talking to Chris Murphy today, like he's starting Saturday's game and he's going to pitch 2 innings. And he's already been told to prep for this kind of like Swiss Army knife role where he could spot start. He could, basically be the Mike Vassell of last year. If Mike Vassell of this year is more like, well, does he graduate to leverage? Does he graduate to starting? It seems like they are really high on him and they're open to maybe leveling up whatever his role is. Maybe he just becomes Mike Vassell year after. I think someone who's a swingman who provides 100 good innings out of the bullpen is pretty neat on its own. But the idea that they're kind of backfilling that role in case he takes a step forward, I think that's prudent. It's more like how wide open is the door? Davitt's obviously another guy who's in camp, who's a starter, and that's basically what he got added to the 40-man roster for, is to add a little bit more depth to it. Chittix and Paez, their Rule 5 pick. I think they're currently aware that carrying 2 Rule 5 picks looks a lot less realistic than it did in November, but that's a guy who's been a starter his whole career. Seems very unlikely he'd win one of the 5 rotation spots out of spring, but certainly someone who's stretching out as you come into this. Shane Murphy is in camp. I wouldn't necessarily think he's a big candidate to win a rotation spot either, but obviously started all year, has obviously been a swingman as well. I want to say that's it as far as obvious candidates, but to me, it's a lot of like swingmen who could kind of pop in necessarily. Like even Austin Voth, like obviously he wants to start, but literally the last time he was in the majors, he was a pretty reliable like reliever for the Mariners just in 2024. He made 68 appearances at a sub-4 ERA. So I just think it's like appropriate depth is what's going on. And for them to be like, and especially like, it's one thing if you have 6 starters and it's just like, you have to give Jonathan Cannon the bad news at the end of the spring, assuming everyone's healthy. Whereas like, if you have 10 starters, it's like, well, breaking the news maybe is a bit more like normal. Like, well, you knew that they're like half of the people weren't going to make it and are going to have some other role. So I hope, I especially think looking around the league and the way like teams think about like how many guys have to take starts or take bulk innings for them, this just seems like they're preparing for a full year rather than preparing to like, how do we get to 5 at the end of March?
But what's funny is I was trying to figure out Charlotte's rotation, and that's even tough.
Yeah, they're overloaded too, ideally. As we know, every Charlotte year has ended with like, hey, we have 2 real starters and we're doing bullpen games like three times out of 5 by June. So
yeah, but it's like Schultz, Smith, McDougal, Sandlin, Davitt, Murphy, Riley Gowans, who we haven't mentioned, is somebody who's like pitched his tail off in Birmingham last 2 years. Like he's kind of been on the doorstep. So it's like you have at least 7 guys, and we'll see what happens with like Cannon or Burke or whoever misses out on a spot. Like, what do they do in Charlotte? Maybe McDougal can start the season in Birmingham since he showed up late. But yeah, just they do have a lot of depth. A lot of guys who could feasibly start or who have earned shots to start at the level either they finished the year at or the level they're expected to graduate to, and that's kind of neat. In a strange puzzle to figure out.
Can any of those guys play outfield?
Would be the best outfielder among them.
Not Noah Schultz.
He's actually a really good defensive pitcher.
Yeah, a lot of reach. Yeah. A lot of good rob homers.
Yeah, wacky inflatable arm flailing tube man.
Long strides.
Just stand in the warning track, Noah. Just rob home runs as they get close to you. Which wall is shorter? Is it right? I think it's right field, right? In Charlotte, that it's shorter
Yeah.
than left field?
Yeah. So
Just
Yeah.
the
So it'd be like Aaron
Mutombo
Judge
finger
out there.
after swatting him back.
I mean, he's still rehabbing, but I think like, especially with like the play he had in his debut, Drew Thorpe could play hell of an outfield in a pinch, I would say.
Well, it is nice that the White Sox do have some depth. I don't know what the quality of depth it is, but they have options, and
They have, like-
that's going to be.
They don't have 3 aces, but they have like all
Right.
the 4-5s in the world.
Well, I know they're probably going to play 60 guys again, and when we do the end of the season quiz, there'll be some guys that we're talking about now that we completely forget when we do that quiz in
Greg
October.
Jones.
Yep. But we posted this video on our YouTube channel. It's one of the shorts, like Mike Vassell. Like, I think Mike has the right idea that a lot of these White Sox pitchers are just going to have to be flexible, Jim. Like, that fifth spot could just be a rotation of who can give me 3 innings right now, because the White Sox obviously start the season in Milwaukee. And then after that Sunday game against the Brewers, they head down to Miami for 3 games. And then they come home to face the Toronto Blue Jays. Like, honestly, that's a tougher start. And we'll talk more about the schedule as we get closer to opening day. But to start in Milwaukee against a very good Brewers team and start at home against the reigning AL pennant winning Toronto Blue Jays, that's a tough start for the White Sox. And then they don't have an off day for like a while, because then they are still at home against Baltimore and they go to Kansas City. So I get it. Like, I understand being wide open, Jim, when it comes to the starting pitching side. I just didn't know it was going to be this many guys vying for that spot. Not only in the 5th starting spot for the White Sox, but it sounds like, what, half the bullpen are going to be swing guys? Like, you could have multiple guys in that bullpen that could go 2 or even 3
Like
innings.
everything's designed to protect Grant Taylor to be able to throw 2 to 3 innings of high octane ball and then get as much rest as he needs, because everybody else will be able to cover 2 to 3 innings themselves, aside from Jordan Leisure and Sir Anthony Dominguez. So a lot of flexibility. I think in previous years where the White Sox were, not expected to be competitive and not even expected to be respectable, I call it crossing the days off the calendar, but just like how few pitchers can we use to get through this game? I think is a lot of it. And this year, I think with, I imagine Will Venable is hoping for more leads, and with more leads comes more traditional bullpen management of 7, 8, 9, or at least 8, 9, depending on when the lead arrives. And we saw him try to go to Grant Taylor for 4+ out saves a couple times in a row. Didn't really work. So I think they're going to take it easy on him a little bit. But, at some point there probably will come a time where he has to establish some sort of leverage ladder and you hope that, I think right now it would be Taylor and Dominguez and Leisure in some order. And if that breaks or somebody gets hurt, I think that's the tricky thing to figure out, is who is your leverage guy among all these swingmen, especially from the left side, which they didn't really have last year. They have some options. Sean Newcomb is new, and he had some medium leverage experience last year, and maybe can do it again to help Brandon Eisert. But yeah, a lot of guys who can help to save arms. I'm curious, though, how it shakes out when it comes to protecting important leads in the 7th inning when Taylor's gassed or Dominguez has pitched 2 days in a row and they need somebody else to step in.
Well, that's Jordan Hicks, right? We haven't talked about him. Is he going to get a chance to start again, or is he just flat out bullpen?
About like extending him, like, because he felt good. We'll see. In terms of like trying to get him right from last year, it seems like the natural thing would be to like kind of simplify what he's going to do and like, hey, let's go out for 1 inning and let it eat and hope that 99 carries you through, rather than like for a guy who's trying to find it again, like, all right, we need to know what your 4-pitch mix is. Like that doesn't seem like the way to like go back to basics with him. So like, he was talking about how good he feels physically, and they wanted to support that and be like, yeah, like if you stretch out and it goes well, like we'll see. But as far as like finding a path for him to win one of the 5 spots out of 11 candidates, that certainly seems like less likely than just like, hey, go in the pen and let it eat, and it'll probably be good. You've been good at this role before. We're not going to have to reinvent the wheel here. the way we would as far as like navigating 6 months of starting.
So 10 guys, 5 starting spots, 4 of the 8 bullpen spots being swing guys. Is that what we're thinking right now?
I mean, we'll see how like the actual roster roll like fits out, right? Because like if Hicks, Newcomb, Sir Anthony, and Leisure are looking great, I mean that's 4 kind of traditional leaguers there. We haven't even brought up like Grant Taylor. Does he count as that, or does he just count as like, you know, the Death Star that you get to pull out like once a series and he goes like 2 to 3 innings?
I think some Rule 5 guys are going to go back to the original team the more we talk about this. But to James's point.
Yeah, I mean, like even watching like Alberto like throw the other day, like I want to say it was Thursday or Wednesday, I should say. He looked great, but also like I was watching, man, carrying Rule 5 guys was easier previous years, wasn't it? And
yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Well, there's a lot of reasons to watch these early spring training games for the Chicago White Sox. Again, they play every single day. Man, from the February 20th all the way to the 28th, they really don't get a day off until Wednesday, March 4th, looking at the spring training schedule. So we got games to watch for the Chicago White Sox and action to analyze. And James will still be there for us for the first week of spring training games. So as always, huge thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters at SoxMachine.com for making that happen. Moving over to league news, and it doesn't get any bigger of what the hell happened with the Players Association with Tony Clark's sudden resignation. At first, it's being reported that the feds are investigating Players Way, which is this player development, creating kids leagues perspective from the Players Association. That investigation is still ongoing. I'm not exactly sure like what the feds are looking for there with that investigation, but it seems to be this affair and nepotism with Tony Clark and his sister-in-law. It gets weird. Regardless, Tony Clark is no longer leading the Players Association. It is now their lead negotiator getting that role as the executive director. But what do you make of what transpired this week with the Players Association? Because it is going to be a big deal after the 2026 season when the league enters into another lockout.
I don't know how much it will hurt. Perhaps there are some factions in the union that preferred Clark to Meyer, and they can go back and forth in terms of who do they trust more, especially as Clark was beginning his tour of spring training sites to talk to players. Was he the guy who talked to players for a reason because he was a former player himself and he was the one who can relate to everybody in that setting, and Meyer's more the guy who can talk to their lawyers? And, when it comes to the negotiating points that the league uses as wedge issues, whether it's international draft or minimum salaries, draft pick compensation for a free agent, like the qualifying offers. Is that something where there will be a little bit of friction between players because they don't have anybody who's like a great uniter? Maybe, but it also seemed like Clark was, based on the fact that it was sudden, but it wasn't surprising necessarily because he was under federal investigation for like a lot of the last year. And when you read just the reporting since, especially the stuff with the sister-in-law, you have to think like players can do better than him, right? At some point, like just how messy it is. It's not just one mistake that was tried to be covered up. It's just that seemed like exploiting one weakness or like a lack of oversight to do something else, based on the way these allegations are piling up. So at some point it was going to collapse, and probably better to do it in spring versus midsummer or fall as a presumed lockout approaches. So I don't expect it to be like a huge deal. I think it's going to be ugly either way when it comes to negotiations. And I'm curious to see if anything else comes of this, or if like Clark just disappears, because nobody really wants to be making this public when you have especially like the sister-in-law stuff. Just that's what everybody, even people who didn't pay attention to baseball or baseball labor or know who Tony Clark was, just jumped on that as like, ew, or how, or why, or which one? Like just all the permutations of people working through publicly because everybody likes to, be in something like this. And it really captured the zeitgeist. So that's, I think, it's probably in the player's best interest to put this behind him and let Tony Clark deal with it.
My group chat on that point, the girls were reaching out to me. What is going on with this sister-in-law? Like, they love mess. They love celebrity mess. And they were trying to find out on their own what exactly was going on. That did catch their attention. But again, Tony Clark, no longer part of the Players Association. I am curious though, James, like the last time the CBA negotiations were going on for the White Sox, it was Lucas Giolito. That was one of the main reps for the Chicago White Sox. Part of that negotiating, I think he was even part of the executive team or subcommittee, one of the big eight as far as the players front in having those negotiations. What is the White Sox union leadership structure now?
I'd have to double check to see if like Lucas was on the subcommittee during last year's, right? I don't know if I checked. I just don't remember like if it was all the same timeline. Anyway, so like the day the Clark news broke, we kind of asked like, who's the players union rep now? We were pointing towards Davis Martin. And I think that was just like the player that we're all most familiar with who was involved in the group. We played Martin interviews on here. A good talker to choose out of the group to go through. But apparently the actual main guy is Chris Murphy, who people might forget was acquired in November for Ronnie Hernandez. I want to say it was earlier in the Rule 5 protection day deadline, or at least around that time, if it wasn't on the exact day of. I actually talked to Murphy today because we didn't talk to him after the trade. He said, like, I got a phone call. I thought, like, well, this is either a trade or a DFA, which was a good introduction to Murphy speaking very articulately and frankly about basically how the league works and how players move around. And I just thought it was people are probably a little surprised, like, hey, is Chris Murphy going to make the team? And that is kind of a little bit of the reason that they have this group share where Martin, Shane Smith, Mike Fassel, and Andrew Benintendi are also in on union stuff as well, and sharing information with other players and making themselves like contact points for guys who aren't, because there will be at least 20 guys on the roster who are not player union reps, despite the high percentage. Is that like, hey, I've got an option left. I might go down at some point this year, very conceivably. But he also I thought was a very good point. It was like, I think players like me should be the union rep. Like, being optioned is like a much more common experience than like, and it makes sense like how it came, like guys who like say Austin Slater, because like that's a dude who's been on the subcommittee, but like also Austin Slater was at a level of accomplishment of his career where you kind of know he's going to be there pretty regularly. Not that he wasn't good at his job, but like just saying like there were ages where like, especially like past CBA negotiations, where like the main subcommittee guys were just all like some of the most notable stars in the league. Whereas like Murphy's point of like, we need to have some representation of guys who like get optioned all the time, guys who get non-tendered, guys who like go through arb disputes over small amounts. Like that's very representative experience. So I think it's the Sox are well positioned in terms of like their player group of like having someone who can speak to like what a lot of the people in the locker room are going to, especially through spring training right now, where it's like he's up like this long wall of just relievers that he's in the middle of. And it's like he can speak to their experiences and like talk to what they're going through and like prep them for like what kind of guys are going to be going through, like what their opt-outs are at the end of spring, or getting optioned or getting sent out or getting reassigned. And like someone who's kind of in the trenches of that, I thought he had an interesting perspective about it. And, other stuff we got into about like the tactics that have built up from teams about salary repression that, they have to be aware of. That I think that they have a good mindset about what they're facing. Obviously, we probably might be talking to Chris Murphy a lot. Hopefully not this time next year about the lockout, but they seem to have, because they have regularly had people who are maybe traditional choices, like Austin Slater and Steven Wilson were their last two union reps, both get traded away. For them to have fanned out to this group approach in anticipation of that, I thought was interesting.
No, that is interesting. Are you going to be writing this up on Sox Machine? Is this an upcoming feature?
No, it was more like a getting to know you conversation
Okay.
with him. But like there's a note about more just like Murphy the player for tomorrow, because he's going to be starting on Saturday, and he's kind of like going to be swingman figure amongst all the people vying for starting rotation spots, so to speak. But a lot of it was more just like chatting, getting to know you, and laying the groundwork for probably staying in touch with them throughout the season and beyond, given the way things are trending.
I'm just picturing like a scenario where like they have 5 union reps and each has a piece of the ring, and if you get rid of one, you might not be able to get what you need. They might be lacking power, and so strength in numbers, and you can't get rid of all of us is probably sound strategy.
The Horcrux approach to union.
There you go, Harry Potter reference, nice. With Murphy though, like we've heard from Bryce Harper, right, top of the food chain when it comes to salary. Chris Bassett, who just recently signed with the Baltimore Orioles, he's making a nice chunk of change, but he's been like 1-year deals the last few years. He's bounced around. But I would like to know more about Murphy's perspective, because there's a lot more players like Chris Murphy's situation than there are obviously in Bryce Harper's situation that'll be voting for the upcoming CBA. And now with this new leadership structure, how do players like Chris Murphy, how are they better protected? And one of the also criticisms of the last CBA is that it didn't do a great job of helping out the minor leaguers at all. And yeah, it seems like the focus has been more on the top end, blowing the ceiling off the roof when it comes to salaries and allowing team spending versus raising the floor.
So an anecdote that I think he mentioned, like, that seemed relevant or like was a shot across the bow to like I think a wider swath of players than like the top of the free agent market, was like when JD Davis, like the was it the A's that like he got arbitration settlement with, and then
Giants.
they didn't like want to pay,
Giants, yeah,
or a Giant, like that situation. I was like, well, what are our protections in instances like that? Since for a lot of guys, like you're hitting arbitration is like making it, so to speak. Like I remember like when Brett Lillardridge got hot, like even him saying like on records, like my big goal is like to make it to arbitration, because like that's when you get like $1 million salary, and that's like the most significant for a lot of them. Like that's where you make the most significant money of your career. So the idea of that having the rug pulled out for you in that situation, like that's something that like I think a middle class of players is really concerned about in the next season.
Evan Marshall during the last labor strife, he joined our podcast and said like, I'm just trying to make $1 million. 1 year in my career would be like a major milestone for me.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
I remember, yeah. Well, the latest reporting, and again, there's going to be a lot reported on, but this is from Joel Sherman and John Heyman of the New York Post today. They wrote that ownership is willing to discuss significantly raising the minimum wage up to $780,000 and lowering the service time needed to reach arbitration and free agency as bargaining chips if the owners can get a salary cap. And preliminary sense is that the cap would be between $260 to $280 million, but the floor would be $140 to $160 million, which the White Sox would really have to boost pay. And if you boost minimum wage up, that would help out the White Sox to get closer to $140 million. We'll see what happens. We got a long way to go, but
I'm not like trying to tell them how to act, but like I think in an age where like they're non-tendering more aggressively than ever, I'm saying like, hey, you get to reach arbitration. I think that's a rug pull, like kind of set up. Like, yeah, you can get arbitration really early, which we're never going to pay out anyway. Like when they're non-tendering guys in pre-arb like Cam Booster to make sure that they don't have to like pay them a raise off the minimum. I think that's kind of a false like promise setup that they're gearing with that.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, Meyer now taking over. Negotiations will be tough for the league. The league's got to figure out their whole revenue issue first off. The new Twins owner, you wrote about the Twins situation on SoxMachine.com, Jim. And just recently, the Sports Business Journal, 50,000 subscribers for the Twins package last year for TV, for streaming. That's it? 50,000? Like, no, that's not sustainable. Like, there's no way that they could continue doing that. So
yeah, and
the league's got to figure out the local TV issue.
Yeah, and that
Aaron Gleeman has 50,000 subscribers.
Right? No kidding. Yeah. I bet he does.
No, it's the case where, like, yeah, maybe it's the same thing of just rather pay him than Twins based on the way their payrolls have dropped off to where, like, we know Aaron Gleeman will make better use of the money than the Twins will.
Yeah, just again, the Dodgers are making over $300 million this season and their local TV deal, and the Twins have 50,000 subscribers. I'm going to be asking Brooks Boyer podcast listeners on Food Day, how many subscribers does CHSN have for the White Sox? Is it more than 50,000, Brooks? Can you at least confirm that for me?
Yeah, you just have to, like, probably just study his facial expressions, like his immediate urge to suppress a grimace would probably be maybe where he goes.
Oh, I know that look. He's giving me
when he sees you
look
coming, it does a double take and just like, oh, great.
Yeah. I know that look. So we'll get more insight, but there's a lot to go on. But now we know that there's a leadership change for Major League Baseball. The ownership's already leaking out numbers to start this conversation. We'll see what happens. But with spring training games, we get to focus on what's happening on the field. The last topic, and I laugh because I saw this on Instagram. Jim Margalus, Major League Baseball now has an official soft drink, and it's Mountain Dew's Baja Blast. Let me guess, you, Jim, big Baja Blast guy?
No. Trying to think last time I had a Mountain Dew in general, like any of the Mountain Dew families or flavors, I can't recall.
James, are you a Baja Blast guy?
Do you think I'm a Baja Blast guy, Josh?
I could see it. I could see you going to Taco Bell, getting a Mexican pizza and a Baja Blast.
Did you order the Code Red?
I did.
I am a sparkling water guy, as people who. I don't know if people would be. If you're watching the cans I'm drinking on this podcast, I don't. That's a level of parasocial that I discourage. But I'm a sparkling water person. My dad loved Diet Coke. I didn't have a lot of exposure to Mountain Dew, I have to say. Does it taste different than regular Mountain Dew?
It is different. Yeah. Okay. It's teal. I don't know how to describe the flavor of Baja Blast, but it was like
I've definitely been extremely sleepy at work, and like all there was a soda vending machine, and thought, like, I think Mountain Dew is the most caffeine, and bought that, but not a ton of exploration outside of that.
Yeah. Let us know, podcast listeners, if you're Baja Blast people. Do baseball players today even drink soda or pop? Is it even in the clubhouse anymore?
I do see like sparkling water. They're all definitely Red Bull people. And this is like a good scouting report for how big his legs are. Do you know those like Mountain Valley water, like those big like green bottles?
Yeah.
Grant Taylor will put one like in his back pocket, and it looks like a regular like can with like leg, and he'll just walk out. And I was like, that's where 101 comes from. Like, but
I remember
he's the only one I see like carrying in a pocket, but I see a lot of those bottles.
I remember seeing being in Boston and sitting down the right field line, Fenway Park, and just seeing how many empty Red Bull cans were under the bullpen bench. And then seeing like Addison Reed, like kind of perched on a bench, like Mr. Peepers, just like constantly fidgeting, just, almost buzzing as he waited to see if he's getting called into a game. Just made me think like it's their intake and their balancing of just, the caffeine that must be coursing through them in one form or another must be intense.
During like spring, like vendors like Evo Shield will come in and like give out, like have like gear or padding for like players to try out and buy some, or like Louisville Slugger will come by one day, like Rawlings comes by one day. Aaron Bummer once described me like Mountain Dew, just like, or not Mountain Dew, Red Bull comes down like they're one of like the equipment vendors, like try out some varieties you'd like, or to all the players, like as if they're like trying out a new bat or glove, and they'll just load up on Red Bull. But other than that, I don't feel like I see them like drinking just like sugary pop very often.
Okay. I was curious.
You feel like, sure, but not Mountain Baja Blast.
No Celsius?
I see like Xmas Celsius more than I see players.
Okay.
I don't know what that says.
Well, maybe Red Bull should have been the official soft drink of Major League Baseball and not Mountain Dew Baja Blast. But for all the Taco Bell fanatics, rejoice. Baja Blast is the official soft drink now of Major League Baseball.
It should be like the official post-game celebration beverage dump of Major League Baseball.
So sticky.
Just
so sticky. Well, hey, Mountain Dew, if you want to sponsor this podcast, I will chug a Baja Blast during each show.
Yeah. I can be bought.
Yeah, we definitely can.
I love Baja Blast.
I feel like more like interviewing minor leaguers. I usually hear like, "Oh, that year I stunk because I was eating too much Taco Bell, and now I stopped, and now I'm good." Is more like the way I would hear about like Taco Bell or Baja Blast being brought up. Like I realized I couldn't do that anymore and compete at the highest level.
Yeah, it'll come get you, that Taco Bell, especially if you eat it pregame. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. And again, visit SoxMachine.com daily for our reports on spring training, as James will be at the games in the first week for the Chicago White Sox, and we'll be having those recaps on the website, including, again, StatCast data, so very exciting. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also watch our videos, which we've been posting almost daily on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. We've already exceeded our views in 2026 from 2025, so thank you guys for watching our videos. And if you are watching our videos but you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. We greatly appreciate it. Follow us on social media. We're on all the social media platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. We're also on bluesky.com at Sox Machine. James is jrfegan.soxmachine.com. I am josh.soxmachine.com. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage, the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, college baseball, the Major League Baseball draft, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at soxmachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. We also have annual subscriptions as well. If you participated in the Sox Machine Reddit AMA and the White Sox channel, Jim posted a promo code. So if you didn't get a chance to see that, I recommend doing so you could use that promo code to gain an extra month on top of your annual subscription. So go ahead and do that. But again, if you're not subscribed yet, you can do so at soxmachine.com/products. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of soxmachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball, and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margalus and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.